This time I'm going to do it from up here. We're going to go gig 001, and we're going to click on port 5 down here. And we're up to 7%. Then we're going to come over here, and we've got from the PC to the router. That's going to be layer 3 to layer 3, so we're going to use a crossover. So we can come here and click this, and then click the port we want over here, which in our case is gig 000. It might take a little bit of work, and you might need to zoom it in to click it, but you can definitely still do it. So gig 00 to that one. Come on. There we go. Now we're up to 8%. If you have to undo it because you made a mistake, click the undo button, and then you should be able to recable it. It doesn't technically remove the cable, and I haven't found a good way of removing the cable in here, but you should be able to do that and then drag it over. So, so for example, if I undo, oh, I actually removed it that time, so that's nice. But it's not going to let me redo it, so just be careful. These things are, it's a little bit finicky, which is why, again, I wanted to give you extra time. You've got 2 attempts to do it, and I think the wiring is likely going to be the most finicky part. So I'll have this better documented than it is tonight when you all get it in that announcement, but just kind of giving you an idea. It might take a little bit of work, but you can definitely do it, especially if you spend time getting the cables right. So that's the first part. That's the cabling and putting these devices over here. The next big thing I wanted to bring up is if you come down here, or you scroll up here, these devices by default are powered off. To make them work, you need to power them on. So how do you power them on? If you zoom in, they have a physical power switch for the router and the PCs. So what do? Come in here, flip the power switch. And that's going to turn that light green, and it's going to tell you it's booting up. You have to wait till it's finished. So it's going to do that. It also tells you that fast forwarding is locked in some other features. So this is actually pretty locked down, which is kind of annoying. But you can still actually access the CLI config in here, which I find hilarious. So I'm not sure if that's a feature or a bug, but that's something. So there's that. Again, you can see these cables here. You got the switch. That's going to be on by default, so you shouldn't need to do anything there. But then if you come down to the PCs, you actually get credit for turning the PCs on. So if you look, this light is gray, similar to the light on the router. If I click the button, it goes on, and I go up to 10%. If I go turn the other one on, it goes on, I'm bringing it up to 11%. So make sure you turn the PCs on and make sure they're cabled correctly. So any questions on this so far in terms of what to expect? Again, feel free to ask questions at any time. I know this is a little quirky, as you can kind of already tell, which is, again, one of the reasons why I wanted to give you the opportunity to push it back. But this is something that I believe I need to do if I want to give you certificates for completing the introduction to networks, which is like a successful score in the final. And I think you have to do this, and I think you have to check off some of the other activities and stuff. So I want to be able to do that for all of you. So that's why I'm requiring you to do the final skills exam. So looks different than the other ones. Yes, this one is special. So this is like the wiring closet view, physical kind of view, instead of like the traditional logical view that you're used to. Conveniently, their practice packet tracer skills assessment is not this way, which is really frustrating because I would like it to be, but it's not. So that's going to probably be, if I have the opportunity to give some feedback on this, it's make a skills assessment that actually parallels this for the practice, because otherwise it's a little wonky. It's, again, one of the other reasons why I'm giving you 2 attempts. So can you click on the logical physical on the top left or switch the mode? I do not believe so. Switching to logical workspace is locked, and this is technically the physical. So, yeah. So that's why I'm saying this one's special, is because you actually have to deal with it this way. So just connecting the cables and parts together is part that the practice doesn't cover. Yes. Are there any ramifications for accidentally putting the cable in an incorrect port and then changing it back to a correct port? Should not be. I'm going to go through and document everything in terms of all the points, or what I think the points roughly are, and specifically all the tasks you need to do. So that way, if there's any discrepancies, we can take a look at those. I'm gonna put some instructions on how, if you have issues, I'll probably have a way of sending the configs, so that way, even um, if you're frustrated hitting your head against the wall and can't figure out why you're not getting points, but you think you have everything configured correctly, you'll have a way of kind of protesting it. I'm gonna have to figure out if there's a good way for me to be able to check and see. I'm gonna do some tests the next couple of days with my personal account just to do some testing, but as far as I know, there should not be any ramifications of undoing it. If you undo it enough time too, you should be able to drag it off and then drag it back, which should also allow you to do the cabling again. So it's special. I apologize that it's as crappy as it is, but it's one of those things that we just kind of have to do. So based on how everyone does on this, I'll make some determinations about how this is graded in the future, but that will be all said and done afterwards. So you should treat this as it's going to be something that's heavily or 2.5% of your final grade. So 2.5% is not a lot, but it adds up. So just keep that in mind as you go. Good questions though. So, but this cabling thing and the turning the devices on is still something tricky that you should just be aware of. And this brings us up to like 11%. The other thing in here, so this is the topology up at the top. Then you have the device table that tells you how everything should be named. It gives you the addressing requirements. And this is the next place I want to spend a little bit of time. So it tells you here, here's your network address space that you're going to subnet. It gives you your requirements for each LAN. So in this case, LAN 1, LAN 2, LAN A, LAN B, however they name it. Make sure these are the right size. So looking here, this is a 29 host network. A 29 host network is going to be a /27, because that gives you 32 total IPs, 30 total hosts, which is they're greater than 29 without going too far over. This one would be the same thing, a /27, because a /28 is going to give you 16 total IPs, which is less than the total number of hosts you need before we do the subtraction. So this is going to be a /27 as well. So we talked about a common practice, and that's setting the router interface or the default gateway or the router's IP address on the local network to being the first IP address that's a host IP address that's available. So again, when we think about it, our first IP address in a subnet is the network definition, that's reserved. Our last IP address is going to be the broadcast address, that's reserved. The first IP address that's available after the network definition is going to be the first host IP address, which is going to be our router IP address or router interface IP address. That's what it's telling you here by saying the first address in the LAN. It's going to be the same for the other router port, but for the other network. The central switch virtual interface, or the VLAN 1 IP address, that is going to be the second host IP address in that subnet. So immediately after the router's IP address in that subnet is going to be the switch's virtual interface within that same subnet. And then the big caveat that's different, again, this should be similar, kind of sound familiar because it's what we did when we were doing the skills integration challenge in class, is instead of using the third host IP address for our workstations, this one is telling you to use the last host IP address. So basically, if you take our broadcast address and you subtract one off of it, instead of adding one to the router address, so subtract one off this broadcast, it's going to give you the last host IP address, which is the one you want to use. So for example, if it's going to be, let me figure out what it is again, 201.0, the first network is going to be 201.0/27. The router's interface is going to be 201.1/27, because again, the network definition is .0. So the router is going to be .1, 201.1 /27. The switch virtual interface is going to be the second one after that. So it's going to be .2 .201.2. So it's going to, again, second host IP address. And then user A is going to be the last one. So that's going to be .30, so .201.30/27, because .31 is going to be the broadcast address, and .32 is going to start the next subnet as the network definition. So if you have questions on that, I'd recommend reviewing the content on subnetting from the beginning of the course, the IP addressing module of this stuff. And I'm also going to put some instructions on the IPv6 stuff in here so you're aware of exactly what you need to do. I'm not trying to make it complicated, but you just need to be able to follow the instructions. So again, we might curve this, we might do some other stuff with it, but for now, this is a credited assignment worth 2.5% of your final grade. So just keep that in mind and take it seriously. Once you've gone and done your addressing, again, you don't need to submit the actual addresses to me, but just, you'll have to do them and configure them. We've used the topology and we've used our tables here. The next thing is the tasks. So this is actually going and configuring your stuff. It gives you a couple notes, and I want to go through these because, again, this is different than usual. Do not use your browser back button or close or reload any exam window during the exam. So essentially, once you open this packet tracer activity from your web browser, so packet tracer should be closed before opening it. It will spawn an instance of packet tracer. Do not touch your web browser until you're ready to submit. Why? Because it's going to be one of those things that's going to be special. So stay tuned. I'll give you more details on that, but just don't fiddle around with your browser because that could have issues in terms of you submitting the exam. One of the other reasons I'm giving you 2 attempts. Do not close packet tracer when you are done. It will close automatically. And then click the submit assessment button in the browser windows to submit your work. So that submit assessment button is going to be your friend. Just don't use the back button and don't close packet tracer. So just keep that in mind. Then it's going to give you the objectives. The objectives here should look very similar to the skills integration challenge and the practice stuff. Build a network. That's what we were doing here with the cabling. Develop the IP addressing schema. That's what we talked about up here with the table. It will close when you reach 100%. I don't know if it's going to close as much as you're going to have the ability to click the submit assessment button in the browser, and then that should close packet tracer. I'm going to double check that, but I believe that is the case. So this is a new feature that I don't think was available in the last version, so I'm experimenting with it currently. Does it save as we go? I don't know. That is a great question that we can probably do some analysis with and figure out. But it would do some work to do that, and I don't know if I'm going to have time to do that, but that's a really interesting question, Cam. So, and thanks, David, for the question on 100%. That's a great question as well. That's going to tell you to configure stuff. So build a network, we've talked about. Developing the IP address schema, we've talked about. It's going to tell you some stuff here on IPv6. I'm going to spell this out really nice and easily for you. So stay tuned for that. And then part 3 is actually going to be starting to configure things. So disable DNS lookup. We've talked about this. Host names, banners, we talked about. Interfaces with descriptions and IP addresses, we've talked about. Same with the default gateway and stuff for the switch. So that should be pretty straightforward there. A big thing here is the switch should be reachable from devices on other networks. That's really a good hint to make sure the default gateway is set correctly, because that's what's going to let that switch's IP address talk with IP addresses on other networks, because it needs to know what the default gateway is. It's going to tell you what to use as your secrets and stuff. So this is some of the security stuff. You should be familiar with encrypted privilege exec passwords, aka the enable secret. Encrypting all plain text passwords, setting minimum password length to 10. This is stuff that was on your assignments last week. Configuring SSH. Again, this should all look very familiar to you. Login local for SSH. Transport input SSH to limit those connections inbound to SSH only. Generate some crypto keys. So this is basically configuring SSH, and you can double check that again if you come in here
and you go to the either the command prompt, if you want to do it by that, or the Telnet SSH client, you should be able to put in these values and connect to the devices using the configuration that you did earlier. So keep that in mind. Again, it's going to tell you it's locked, but then prompt you and let you configure stuff here. So just keep that in mind. Packet Tracer is special, and they really don't do a good job of QA. So I feel like I'm oftentimes their QA along with all of you. So thanks for your patience on this stuff. Secure all switch ports. So it's going to say shut down all unused ports and add descriptions for the unused ports. We're going to discuss this tonight. It is the content that we're going to kind of talk about a little bit when we do the practice exercise. And the reason for this is there's actually a really neat, useful feature. So you don't have to go manually configure your interface, do setting, exit, configure another interface, do the same thing. That gets really long and tiresome. I'm going to show you how to do it with multiple interfaces in a single couple clicks. So we're going to do that just to walk you through it. And then configure the host and verify connectivity. Make sure you've got your hosts and everything set up correctly. It says to use the 10th address. 10th address is a really good hint that it's hexadecimal, so it should end in A. But again, I'll put all this stuff in an announcement either today or towards the end of the week. So again, you'll have everything you need to know to succeed on this, but it can be a little quirky. So just keep that in mind. If you have a Windows PC, I would recommend probably doing this on Windows. If you have a Mac, I'm going to do it on the Mac just to make sure. But generally speaking, I would say the Windows Packet Tracer is more stable because it's been around longer. So just keep that in mind in terms of when you're doing this. But again, you have 2 attempts. It's 2 hours each. So just follow the instructions and you should be good. So any questions on this before we cover some of the topics around this that I think will be helpful? Again, big things here. The wiring is a little funky, making sure all the devices are powered on. Otherwise, you'll get an error like all usable tabs are hidden in this power state. Is that a final PT? Yes, this is a final Packet Tracer skills exam. So this is the assessment preview that instructors have access to. So it is very similar to the one I have last night, but with different IP range sizes. So I'm assuming this is one of the 3 as well. So, but yes, this is a final Packet Tracer that should look extremely similar to. How much time will we need from the 2 hours to finish this? I don't know. Depends on the person. Janiel. And the reason I say that is because some people are going to be very quick at it. Some people are going to refer back to their notes. Some people are just going to kind of buzz through it. Again, there's the cheat sheet. It's on Blackboard. It's got commands and stuff on it. That's for your use. I'm going to update it. Need 3 hours. I think you can do it in 2. A bit scared, but looking forward to testing all the skills we learned. So again, here's the thing. You can copy your configs. So for example, I'm going to show you a neat little trick here that's designed to help you. If you come to a device that you've configured or have been working on, or if you're getting close to the couple hours and you're not happy with your score, enable show run. You can do that so that way you've got the whole thing here. You can proceed to copy your configuration file and paste it into a text document. And you can essentially use this to kind of track the commands you've entered in the configurations. So this is kind of a useful little thing if you wanted to make changes or do other stuff or just review what you have before you do the second attempt. This is one of the ways you could do that is just by copying that config out. So just keep in mind there's a little bit of hacky things you can do to make your lives easier. I think you can easily do it in 2 hours though. So especially if you're pretty familiar with all the skills you needed in the skills integration challenge, go back and take a look at the commands you used in your config files, and those should be very similar to some of the stuff you're going to do here. Do we have the ability to check our results like we did on the other packet tracers? I don't know if I pointed this out. So you've got your completion score here, right? So that's good. But an important note here is if you click the check results, it's locked. So um, you can't check your results that way, but you do have a score that should be running the entire time. If you think there might be an issue submitting or whatever, feel free to just screenshot the thing. And if there's issues, I'll take a look at that. So, but yes. So it's one of those, again, the practice is going to be helpful because the practice doesn't show you the check results either. So again, that practice is going to be really helpful in gauging your stuff, but not necessarily telling you what everything is. So, but again, this should look very similar, other than this weird physical interface, to the skills integration challenge. That's the reason why that assignment was required, is because it's very similar in content. Is practice packet tracer skills assessment due this week? The practice packet tracer skills assessment and the practice final are there for you. You don't have to do them. You can do them multiple times, whatever works best for you. I think it's potentially useful to take them at least once, but that would be my recommendation. That will be hard to know what we missed. Like if we're like a couple % off and we don't know what we need. Yeah. So this, and this is one of the other reasons I kind of like this. And you might be like, he likes this? That's kind of mean. Like, what's he trying to do? This is the last thing here is there should be IPv4 and IPv6 connectivity between all devices and hosts. So assuming you went through and did all these steps here, you've looked at your config files and everything looks normal. Theoretically, you should have 100%. This is a really good use of your troubleshooting skills, aka why I had you do the troubleshooting challenge last week, because this is the way it is in the real world. This is a very real world exercise. Is I have a network, I need to configure it to meet some business requirements, and I need to make sure it works, and I don't have something to score and tell me what I'm doing wrong. This is a very practical application of all the stuff you've learned, which is one of the reasons I kind of like this a lot. Despite the fact that it's quirky and kind of pisses me off at times, I like this concept for a final because, again, I think it's valuable. The only thing I don't know if I would do is the timer portion, but I'm a little limited in what I can do there. So, but I believe in all of you. Like, you've done a great job so far this semester on your activities. You can definitely do this. So, believe in yourself. If you have questions, I'm around. But generally speaking, this is your time to shine. So, the activities you've done so far were there for a reason because those all align with the goals that and stuff you have to do here. So, any other questions? Some really great questions from the group. Cool. Again, if you have questions, feel free to shoot me an email, ask them, come to office hours. I'm going to briefly stop my share so that way I can switch this over. Minimize that, find my Firefox tab, hide packet tracer. And then I'm going to close out of this. And then, cool. Assessment viewer, practice, skills assessment. Again, all the practice stuff is open already. So if you don't have access to it, let me know, but you should be able to. Go ahead, bring this over here. Share screen, desktop one, share. All right, can everyone see my Firefox tab again? That has the packet tracer open thing on it.
Yes.
Cool. Give this packet tracer a moment to load. Make sure it's not hiding. Also, by the way, super big thank you to everyone who wrote really nice thank you notes or added our guest speakers on LinkedIn and went above and beyond. You made me look really good. You made my speakers want to come back again, and you made them very, very glad that they participated. So, thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate it. So, especially as I look to have guest speakers come back again in the future, y'all. And again, we've talked about this previously, but it was fantastic participation and questions and everything. So this is the practice skills assessment though. So it's change topics again. Some very similar stuff, some IPv4, IPv6 addressing. You're gonna get this table again instead of some of the other stuff. So again, I'll give you some instructions so that way it's not bad. But just be prepared. Very similar things, you know, subnetting, telling you which, you know, what should be the building one versus what should be this, that, or the other. So again, slightly different styles, but just pay attention and follow the instructions here. Check results is locked, but this is very good for kind of testing your knowledge of what you're going to have to do in the final skills exam. So a lot of the same SSH things. And again, go back and refer to the skills integration challenge you all did last week if you are curious about stuff, the command cheat sheet, the subnetting cheat sheet, the subnetting practice, all those resources are there and available for you. So, but the main thing I wanted to kind of demo is configuring a range of interfaces on a switch specifically, because you'll have switches like this, right? Which, okay, come on. If I hover over it, it should hopefully, okay. This is why I love Packet Tracer. Live demos are always fun. But you can see the interfaces stuff's connected to this way. So Fast Ethernet 1, Fast Ethernet 2, and Giga 1, which means that this switch, which it tells you here, by the way, floor 1 is going to be already configured. So you should just need to configure everything else over here. So we're going to configure the second floor switch. Again, if you want to connect to the second floor switch, the easiest way about going about doing that here is going to be the console cable, because again, that CLI tab is going to be locked. So configure is locked. So go ahead and console it. So RS-232 on a host to the console port on the switch. Come in here, terminal, okay, and then you're into the switch config. Enable, show interfaces. You can also say, I believe brief is a valid one. Okay, so show, it's IP interfaces brief. Come on. IP interface brief, there we go. So show IP interface brief is a really good way of looking at interfaces and IP addresses and stuff to see what's assigned and configured. If you look here, Fast Ethernet 1 is used. Fast Ethernet 24 is used. And if we come in here and look at what port is connected to the router, it's a gig port. So we've essentially used 1 and 24, but we have all of these other interfaces which are unused. And on the final, again, this is not relevant to this, but on the final skills exam, it's going to tell you to configure all of these as A, administratively shut down, and B, with the description saying they're admin shut down. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to come in here and we're going to configure the terminal. And we're going to configure a range of interfaces. So interface range. The way interface range works is you specify the type after range. So in this case, we're going to be configuring Fast Ethernet. The first one we're going to want to configure is going to be 0/2, and the last is going to be 0/23. So 0/2. And I was going to say you can separate it with a comma. That's a lot of work though. Or you can use a hyphen. So that's like a range, like a true range, instead of just a bunch of IP or interfaces. So we'll configure this. It's going to tell us again, Fast Ethernet 0/23 this time, Because again, 2 through 23 are the ones that are not in use. How can we tell the other 1 and 24 are up? And 1 is the one that's connected to the router. So we can go ahead and do that. So now if you look, it's going to say the switch to, and it's going to configure interface, and it's going to tell you it's a range. So now we can run commands like shutdown, and it will change all 22 interfaces to administratively shut down. I can say description, administratively down. And I can say do right. And now if I say, do show IP interface brief, they're all administratively down now instead of just plain down. So you can see, and if we go and look at our do show run, again, get familiar with these show commands because that's how you're gonna help troubleshoot all your work when you're doing the activities that don't tell you what you got wrong. Now, if you look, starting with like interface 2 and going through interface 23, description administratively down and it's shut down. So that's how you configure a range of interfaces at the same time. And you can just exit your way out or end back to privileged exec. So any questions on configuring a range of interfaces? So this is the last big topic I think I haven't covered that will help you succeed on that skills assessment. So if you're manually configuring interfaces, you're probably doing it wrong in terms of like each of these one at a time. Configure a range, it will make your life easier when you can. So any other questions or things you want me to review in terms of the packet tracer skills assessment? We have 15 minutes left. All right. So since everyone's quiet, and I'm going to stop sharing and close this out. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns on what is due this coming Sunday at 11:59 p.m. PDT and opens at 12 a.m. Friday PDT, aka the final exam? Again, we're reviewing that in class on Thursday and it will open Friday morning. But are there any questions on the final exam, the final skills exam, which I'm pushing back, or just other stuff in the course that I can answer for everyone before we end for tonight? So this week it's only going to be the final exam due. The 4 assignments were due last weekend. So you should only have one thing due this weekend, technically. You're still going to have to do the feedback to unlock the final exam, which I'll explain. But the only thing that's due that's actually should be hopefully a little challenging or work-wise is the final exam. So, yep, no, that's a great question. Thanks for clarifying. I talk a lot about different things and switch back and forth sometimes. So, will the skills exam open up this weekend too? Yes, that is my plan, David. If students want to get ahead on it and have less work next week, since I covered the stuff tonight, I'm just going to make sure I've got good instructions so everyone has a fair playing field when I send it out. Where's the feedback? Same place as all the other stuff in that final block that says the final exam and the final skills exam. That's where you're going to find the course feedback form. What is the final exam? Basically the module group exams, but for the entire course. We're going to cover more on the final exam and the number of questions and the topics on Thursday, because I actually have to do some special work to get those for all of you, because I don't have a fancy assessment viewer for it, which is kind of annoying. So I'm going to be spending some time grinding through that. So hopefully it's pretty simple. But thank you for those questions. What is the final exam? Where's the feedback? Okay, so we leave final exam alone and do final skills exam. No, so let me clarify this again. This weekend, the only thing that's going to be due is the final exam. The final skills exam will be open for those who want to take it, but it's not going to be due this Sunday. The final skills exam is going to be due a week and a half from Friday. So not this coming Sunday, but the following Sunday. The big thing for this week that I want to stress is the final exam and the course feedback form. So originally it was going to be both, but now it's just the final exam this week and the skills exam next week. So any other questions? Really great clarifying questions. GG. I think it's easier. I mean, I don't think it's going to be bad. So feedback isn't graded, right? Yeah, no, it's not graded, but at least I believe it's required for the final exam and to get the certificate. So you need to do the course feedback. So um, if you provide feedback and just don't click through and click the same answer, I'd appreciate it. If you think that the first answer is basically the way it is, feel free. But if you put some thought into it and just spend a couple minutes, it shouldn't take you very long. It's all multiple choice, I believe. I would appreciate it. So I am so nervous. Don't worry about it. It's not going to hopefully be too bad, especially if you've been doing well in your exams so far. Again, come to class on Thursday. We're going to do our review, which is an opportunity to, again, get some ideas of the questions and topics on the final exam, get additional details on the final exam, and earn extra credit by proving your knowledge so far in the course. So I'd say it's a big win-win, personally. So hold up. So final exam, not final skills exam. I seen a comment up that it had reversed. You are correct. It is the final exam that's due this coming Sunday. There is some confusion over that. I apologize if I ever misstated it, but it is the final exam that's due this coming Sunday. The final skills exam is what I'm giving you an extra week on. So don't worry about it, but I still wanted to introduce it tonight because next week we are covering other topics, so I'm not going to be specifically addressing those things because I want to make sure we have enough time to cover the other topics, but I'm going to give you an extra week to do the skills exam nonetheless. So any other questions? Really great participation questions tonight. If y'all keep up the good work, y'all gonna earn some mighty extra credit on Thursday. So any other questions? You said the Cisco course would get archived. Yes, it should get archived, but you should, I believe, still be able to access it. I know at least you could when it was pre-Moodle. I'm not sure how the Moodle courses work. So I'll work and see if I've got a better answer than that. But you should still at least be able to access, I believe, the content after the fact, even if the course is technically completed. So good question. Still working on that, Raheem. Thank you for the reminder. So he was asking if we can get access to the other two sections so you have all the course material for the CCNA. It's a larger discussion I need to have with Pike, and Pike's on sabbatical, so I'm trying to find some time to discuss that with him. So, yeah. Any other questions for tonight? All right. Well, if that's the case, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording. Have a great rest of your evening. Don't stress too much. Come to class prepared to do some high quality polling on Thursday and earn some extra credit. And have a good rest of your night and good luck on your midterms / exams. If you need anything, let me know.